Kate has spent 18 years as a Montessori educator for students aged 2.5 to 14, and she is here to share some ideas for not just surviving this extended period of forced togetherness, I'm saying that in finger quotes, but for finding opportunities within that will benefit your children's long-term success. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining me. I know that a lot of people out there are really struggling with this expression that I'm going to use that apparently is a little bit controversial, homeschooling. I'm finding that out from my education professionals, but for the rest of us, laymen, if you will, that's sort of what we call it, homeschooling. And I know a lot of parents out there are really struggling with the challenges of this, partly because it's not something we do, unless you're an educator, but also because of the challenge of having to be at home, but working from home and juggling all of that.
Absolutely.
So before we get into your top 10 tips, I want you to explain to me, because I don't know the difference between a public school philosophy and a Montessori education. Can you just explain what that is?
Absolutely. So Montessori philosophy was sort of the originator of that whole child education that we hear so much about. You know, every school now has a mission statement that says we educate the whole child. But Dr. Montessori was really the one who fired that up. And it's about so much more than just what happens in the math curriculum or the language curriculum. So in a typical Montessori school, you're looking at a mixed age classroom environment where the children stay in the same space for 3 years, which is very much like a family where it's mixed ages together. And you're trying to foster the qualities and work habits in these kids that are going to benefit them through their whole life. So independence, concentration, problem solving, resiliency, time management, the ability to be calm and persevere in the face of challenging circumstances. All of those things are what we try to build in Montessori environments. And we do it through preparing the classroom environment and preparing the emotional environment for the children in a really specific way that's geared to their age and stage of development.
And can you also explain for our audience why should I not use the expression homeschooling? Why is that a misnomer?
Well, the difficulty with it, especially right now, is that it's putting a ton of extra pressure on parents. Because this is, for most families, this is the first time in their entire parenting career where they have been at home with their kids 24/7. Right? No grandparents coming over on the weekends, no play dates, no going to the park with a coffee, no babysitter popping in a couple times a week, no school, no after school activities, nothing, right? These families are now 100% all that their kids have. And they're being told that in addition to keeping their tiny humans alive, they also need to prepare them healthy, wholesome meals, and they need to make sure they're staying in their sleep routine, and their house needs to be quarantine level clean because there's a deadly virus, and they're supposed to be sitting with them to make sure they don't get behind in any of their education. They have to entertain them, maintain a social and emotional connection, do yoga twice a day, and they also are trying to do their own jobs.
Yeah.
So when we frame it as homeschooling, it makes parents feel guilty. It makes them feel like they're not enough and they're not doing enough. And it just makes an already anxious situation completely unbearable.
Absolutely. I think there are so many people that can relate to that because that is what I'm hearing when I'm talking to my friends and clients who are trying to educate their children at home. So let's get into your top 10. And if you could just preface it with what these top 10 tips are really for, because again, the focus isn't just homeschooling.
Of course, yeah. So, the purpose of parenting and the purpose of education has always been not to raise kids, right? At the end of this, you don't want a child, you want an adult. Yeah. So the purpose has always been guiding these little humans towards becoming big humans who can handle whatever an uncertain future looks like, right? We've never known what the future is going to be. So the purpose of parenting hasn't changed, right? The circumstances right now are just that everything is uncertain and unpredictable, and it's that way for everybody on the planet. That's what's unusual. And instead of gradually growing into a complicated, uncertain future, it's been thrust upon us, without a lot of preparation. So what I'm hoping, I've divided my top 10 into different categories. So the first 4 are really those quick fixes that families can start implementing tomorrow, and where they're going to start getting some quick wins and see some positive changes and positive results almost immediately. And then I've layered on 4 more tips that they take a little bit more time to implement and a little bit more discussion and buy-in with your family. So they're a little bit more effort in the short term, but in the long term, you're building all of those qualities you want your kids to have, right? Empathy, problem solving, time management, all of those things we were talking about earlier, self-regulation, right? Independence, concentration, all of those things. And then the last 2 are my gifts to parents, to lift off the guilt, to lift off the extra burden, right? Social media is flooded right now with all of these lists, right? 10 things you can do with your kids, right? Keep them entertained, how to keep them fit, right? Build a shamrock garden in your window, have a teddy bear picnic, put it on your front porch so we can go on a hunt. All of these are great ideas in and of themselves, but as a collective, what they're doing is they're making parents feel like, oh my God, if I'm not sidewalk chalking messages to the neighbors, I'm failing.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a failure. And I know from my own experience as a grown-up and in business that if you have a list that's too long, sometimes it's just overwhelming and you don't get to anything that's on the list.
Absolutely. And then you feel like a failure, and then you feel like you have no control over anything. So you hold tight to the only things you can control, which tend to be the little humans in your life.
Yeah.
So, if we can get started with
let's do it.
Quick wins. So my first tip is what I call taking your family's emotional temperature. So we know that little kids get up early, right? They're up by 6 a.m. and they're raring to go. And before Corona, we're going to refer to that as BC. So in our BC lives, right, you're running around, you're trying to get everybody out the door and where they need to be. The gift of this time period is that you don't actually need to do that. So if you take some time in the morning as your kids are trickling downstairs, you've got your coffee, for the purposes of this, I'm going to talk about sort of 2-parent families, but many of these things apply equally as well, if not better, to single-parent families or families where there's additional caregivers living in the home. So you're downstairs, you're having your coffee, and your kids are trickling down, and you play a card game, or you do a crossword puzzle, or you do a regular puzzle, or you just chill out and you chat. Right? It's not about having deep, meaningful, reflective conversations first thing in the morning, but this is how you get a read on how the day is going to go. And this does 2 things for you. The first thing that it does is it gives you that opportunity to tell, all right, we've got a high energy kind of day. This is awesome. My kids are feeling, they slept well, they're enthusiastic. Maybe today's the day we're going to do a little more of that academic learning. Or they drag themselves down the stairs. They've already cried 3 times and it's not even 6:30 in the morning, right? Today's the kind of day where we're going to be going outside as a family this afternoon and building a fort. Or we're going to be, FaceTime cookie baking with grandma, right? You read the temperature, the emotional temperature of your family. That gives you the chance to adjust your expectations. If you adjust your expectations for how this day is going to go, your kids can then rise to those expectations and feel successful. And the other thing that this does is it gives them guaranteed, calm, quiet, device-free, connected time. We call it in Montessori collecting your children. We do it in the classrooms when they come in first thing in the morning. So you've now guaranteed them, they know that every single morning, without fail, they're going to get some calm, chilled out, collected time. That takes away the need for some of those attention cravings later in the day. So that's number 1.
The attention cravings. I've heard of that, and that is a real thing.
You and I were talking about this before we went live. Most families BC were only having a few hours a day with their kids. And so they were spending that in time really with their kids. So now that it's 24/7, the kids don't understand why they can't have their parents all the time, right? It's new for them. They have to adjust. And parents are trying so hard to give them that they're wearing themselves out, physically and So number one, take that emotional temperature. And that flows right into number two, which is establish your routine for the day based on that day. If you try to set a routine that this is how your week is going to go, you're setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. So if you and your family are sitting together, having a family meeting, for lack of a better term, and you figure out what the day is going to look like, right? You take into account your work schedule, your spouse's work schedule, right? You've got a call from 10 to 12 that you can't miss. So you're tagging in your spouse during that time. Or that's the time when the kids are having independent choice, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But they're on their own. Sorry, kiddo, you can do this. You're on your own, okay? And we'll talk about how to set that up, okay? So everyone in the family gets to be heard, right? They're not running to you 3 hours later because they remembered something they needed to tell you. You're having a chance together to talk about this ahead of time. So you've taken the emotional temperature of the family, and then you're establishing your routine based on that. And the key to this is everyone writes down their agenda for the day. So if you've got a 3-year-old, they're scribbling out pictures and telling you what that means, and you're writing it down underneath, right? For your elementary age kids, they're jotting down their agenda. For your high schoolers, right, they're writing it down and they're taking on more of the planning. So when you're talking about a routine, over the course of a week, yeah, you need to have some academic time. You need to have exercise time. You need outdoor time. You need family chore, household responsibility stuff time. You need device time where you're connecting, right? You need to be FaceTiming with friends. You need to be having a play date with, neighbors over Skype, whatever. But not all of it has to happen every day. And it doesn't all have to happen in the same way at the same time every day. So if you're looking at big picture, which is what we do in a Montessori education, you don't have to put pressure on yourself to get every single thing in every day. And we'll talk more later about how to implement some choice into those routines.
I think this is great advice for parents too.
Absolutely.
Not just for the kids, but
absolutely. And you want to make it special. So if you happen to have, you've got 3 kids and you happen to have 3 notebooks laying around, great. But if not, everyone has lined paper or computer paper in their house. So you staple together a bunch of pages, or you hole punch them and they tie it together with yarn, and suddenly they've got their very own agenda, right? It's theirs. They can decorate it however they want. You just killed an hour right there of their independent time later in the day while you're on a conference call. So giving them the ability to be involved in that routine making so they don't feel like they're just being dictated to. And we'll talk about why that's important, a little bit later as well. So this brings me to quick win number 3, and that's about choice. So we know as humans that when we feel like we've got control over things, we feel confident, we feel capable, right? We've got this. All of a sudden, the world is on fire, and we don't have control over anything at all. So we're trying to take control as adults over whatever we can. And it's scary, right? You're trying to build in some control where external things are unpredictable. So often what that turns into is, without meaning to, trying to control the little humans. And the funny part is that the little humans are also feeling scared, and they're feeling that things are unpredictable. So they're trying to control what they can. And what you get is this tug of war.
Yeah.
I remember my very first day as a student teaching intern, I said to my principal, do you have any advice for me? And she said, yeah, if you get into a power struggle with a 3-year-old, you will lose.
I've experienced that.
Yes. One of my favorite parent educators, her name is Allison Schaefer. She's out of Canada. She's amazing. She has this analogy of it's only a tug of war if 2 people are tugging on the rope, right? If you drop the rope, it's not a tug of war anymore. It's one person feeling silly holding a rope. So one of the ways to do that in terms of quick wins is to build more choice into your children's lives. And I'm being very careful to caution, this is choice within limits. So for little ones, it's not, what do you want to wear today? It's, do you want your blue sweater or your red sweater, right? It's not, what do you want for lunch today? It's, do you want a cheese sandwich or a peanut butter sandwich, right? And these are the kinds of things you can talk about during your family meeting as well, right? For your elementary age kids, it's, that today, based on what our day looks like, you need to do an hour and a half of your schoolwork. So are you going to do that in a morning block or an afternoon block? And are you going to start with math or start with reading, right? Your call. those are the kinds of choice that you can start implementing right away. For your high schoolers and your older middle school students, if they know that in that day, they have to have time for schoolwork, time for outdoor play, time for family chores, and they get an hour on their phone to communicate with their friends, let them decide how that's going to work. And they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to not get done what they thought they should, and they're going to learn from it. Because the time management skills they develop are going to be hugely important for their whole life, and it's a low stakes game right now. So they can start having these choices and learning from the outcomes of those choices while it's safe, it's comfortable. They still have your frontal lobe to back them up if they make a bad choice. So, that implementing as much choice as you can within your day is already going to ease some of that behavior that you might be seeing with kids.
So it sounds like the structure that they need, because that's what I have been hearing, is that they do need a routine and some structure, but it doesn't have to be like military style, right? So I like that you can give them some choices within that framework.
Absolutely. And because you've done number one, which is take the family's emotional temperature, is today going to be a day where we can be productive and walk away at the end of this day having made some gains? Or is today the kind of day where the best thing we can do as a family is take a step back and breathe, right? And beautiful weather, you've got a light afternoon at work, you're going outside to do some family chores, right? You're going to be together. So you really have control over how the day is going to go, and you're setting up those routines and expectations based on what you know about your kids.
And a lot of it depends on how the parent's day is going, right? Like if they're the one who's been crying 3 times by 6 days.
So take the pressure off of yourself, right? You don't have to be all things for all of the humans in your house all the time, and we'll get to that when we get to points 9 and 10. But, if you can do those things, if you can take the emotional temperature of the family and adjust your expectations, and then set up your routine based on what are the things that have to get done today and what are the things we have some flexibility on, right? Implement choices wherever possible, but within limits, right? The kids don't run the show. You're still the grown-up. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth quick win is understanding that behavior is communication, right? Always, 100% of the time. And that goes for you and it goes for your kids. Behavior is communication. The most important thing you can do for your family and for your children and with your spouse is protect the relationship that you have. So you're going to have a shorter fuse because things are scary right now, right? I have a shorter fuse. Everyone has a shorter fuse right now. So if you can give yourself permission not to react in a disciplinary way when your kids are acting out, the beauty is that right now there's nobody around, right? If your kid is having an out and out tantrum, no one is judging you but you. You're not in the supermarket, you're not at the playground, no one is standing there thinking, oh my God, what a terrible mother, why isn't she doing something about her child, right? You have the gift of isolation. So your kids can feel what they feel and you can feel what you feel. They're learning self-regulation from you. So the best way to ease, the temper tantrums or the what is perceived as back talk or the fighting with their siblings is to disrupt their expectations in a positive way, right? If they're expecting you to come running into the room and start shouting at them because they're fighting again, come into the room and scoop them up in a hug. Make them laugh, right? Give them, it's not them winning. It's you teaching them how to work through overwhelming emotions. And I think that's the biggest piece, is that we think of it as giving in, when truly what we're doing is giving them what they need. And it's different. And over the long term, you're going to see a lot less of that kind of behavior because you're already adjusting your expectations based on the emotional temperature of the family, right? You're already adjusting your routine. You're already giving them choice. So you're going to see less and less of that behavior as communication.
I imagine that's really hard though as a parent when you're having a total tantrum and you've got a Zoom call in 10 minutes and you need to look at some papers before you get on that call for work, and you just want the kid to just just sit down and, read this book because I have to get to this other stuff that's really important. I don't know. I mean, how do you do that? It does require a lot of discipline on the parent.
It does. And again, it goes back to the Montessori philosophy of preparing the environment. Those first three things that we talked about, those are preparing the emotional environment. I've been in a Montessori classroom for 18 years at a whole range of ages. And without fail, when parents walk into the room, especially when I was teaching primary ages, right, 3 to 6 year olds, they all go, I don't understand, how are they all working and playing nicely, and they're not fighting, and they're not all tugging on your leg. And it's because when you set up the environment based on what they need, it takes away a lot of that behavior management need, because you're eliminating those stressors, right? If you set a rigid schedule, this is how it's going to be, and you're going to do these activities that I've dictated for you between this time and this time, and the kids have no choice, you've just set yourself up for a whole morning of meltdowns.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff lifts itself up, and this is why I have them listed under the quick win category, because if you can set these things up and your kids start to trust, I'm going to have this time to connect every morning. I'm going to have some choice in my day. I'm going to be heard when it's time to set up our routines. A lot of that behavior just kind of falls away.
I'm sort of thinking that a lot of this is applicable to business management.
It's funny, when I was in my younger years, I used to joke that, going out to dance clubs and dealing with people who'd had too much to drink was very much like being a kindergarten teacher. Yeah. A lot of the same things applied.
I can see the similarities, yeah.
So, those are the 4 things that you can really start tomorrow if you wanted to. The next 4, as I said, they take a little bit more discussion to implement, and they take a little bit more time to implement. But this is where all of those skills we talked about earlier are really going to start to come into play. This is the stuff that is going to mean you're not going to have a 40-year-old living in your basement. And this is an amazing opportunity right now. We can't change the outside circumstances, but we can change how we perceive them. And it's not only going to make your family life better for however long this goes on, but when this is over, we don't know what life is going to look like. So these are the things that are really going to benefit over the long term.
And even if we go back to business as usual, and hoping that we do at some point, are these things that people could continue to use?
Absolutely.
So we're really just setting the work for that now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And this is why this unexpected, period of forced togetherness is an opportunity if you choose to see it that way. Because you have time now to put some of these things in place. So my number 5 tip is about responsibility and independence. So, BC, a lot of parents did things for their kids that they could have done for themselves out of love and out of lack of time, right? You're rushing to get them out the door in the morning. They're eating breakfast in the car, whatever that looks like. Getting them off to school, picking them up from school, taking them to soccer practice and swimming practice and piano lessons, and getting them home and doing homework. So a lot of times, parents have felt like it was just faster and easier to do the household things themselves, right? Or if families are in circumstances where they've earned the privilege of having a cleaning service, or using HelloFresh for some of those meals, right? Some of those convenience things. Families have done that so that they could have more quality time with their kids, right? But now the paradigm has shifted. You've got nothing but time with your kids, right? You're with them all the time, and you don't have your cleaning person anymore. And unless you're getting takeout from a local restaurant 5 nights a week, you're in a situation where the household stuff still needs to happen. And in addition to that, your kids need to know how to do stuff when they become adults. So this is your golden opportunity. Because not only are you benefiting their life skills, but if you think about someone calls you and invites you to dinner, what is the very first thing you ask?
What's for dinner? What time can I be over?
What can I bring, right? What can I bring?
Oh,
everyone says.
No, that's not the first thing I ask.
And then, you roll in and you set your potluck casserole on the counter, and the next thing you say is, how can I help? What can I do, right? because humans are designed to be interdependent, to be needed, to be useful, right? When you develop a skill, when you learn to bake something amazing and you bring it to someone's house and everyone oohs and ahs over it, they think it's amazing, right? You feel good, right? When you do something to help someone else, you feel good. When you can use your skills to make a difference in someone's life. And that's how we build confidence, and that's how we build capability. And those things lead to the courage that kids need and adults need to deal with uncertain circumstances. So the benefit in the short term is that the whole family is going to be helping out around the house. And, again, you have to adjust your expectations, because your 5-year-old is not going to make the bed the same way you make the bed.
Yeah.
Your 10-year-old is not cleaning the bathroom the same way you clean the bathroom. That's okay, right? If you go around and do it after them, you've just told them you don't trust them. You've just told them they're actually not capable of it. If you say things like, can you do mommy a favor and pick up your toys? Or can you come and be a big helper for daddy to do this? What you're telling them is, this is my house. You're just a visitor in it. When the expectation as a family is, everyone in this family has skin in the game. We all benefit when we all contribute. It changes how kids look at it. And yes, there's still going to be grumbling, and there's still going to be, I don't want to do the dishes and all of that. But if you set up in your family meeting, what are the things that need to get done daily? What are the things that need to get done weekly, right? This is a great time to be doing the outside, yard work. This is a great time to be washing the windows, spring cleaning the closets, having the kids be involved in all of these lifetime activities that have to get done, right? And you've got time. Dr. Montessori always says, teach by teaching, not by correcting. You've got time to show them how to do it again and show them how to do it again until they get it.
So what would you say to them instead of saying, be my helper or do me a favor? What would be a better thing to say?
So if you, again, set it up in the family meetings where you know that today, Johnny is going to be setting the table and, Susie is going to be clearing the table, then it's not, can you do me a favor and clear the table? It's, all right, it's time to clear the table. Who's up kind of thing. It becomes less about them doing it for you and more about, this is just what we do, and again, if you spend that time, and this takes a little bit more time, so you might want to start this on a weekend where you're not working. So you sit down together, you talk about it, you say, look, over the next week, this is what needs to get done, right? And you look at the ages and stages of your kids, because obviously, your 3-year-old can pick up their own toys and they can clear their own dishes and they can help set the table and help wash the dishes and help fold the laundry, but they're not going to be out there with the lawnmower, right? So, you adjust it based on the ages and stages. And again, I'm happy to provide information afterwards that's specific to what kinds of things are appropriate for what ages and stages. But it really does build, not only everyone is sharing the responsibility, so the burden is lifted off of parents, but it benefits long term.
Now, this could be a bit of a jolt in some families, right? A bit of a shock, especially to the kids.
Absolutely. And that's why, don't wake up tomorrow morning and decide, I'm going to implement this right now. I'm going to tell my 10-year-old suddenly she is Cinderella and I'm going to sit back and, eat bonbons and watch her work, right? This is the kind of thing that takes a bit of buy-in. It takes a bit of negotiation, right? And it's another opportunity for choice. So if you're saying you got 3 kids in elementary age and you're saying to them, look, this week, these are the things that you guys need to learn how to do, right? So let's talk about, which one do you want to try first, right? Who wants to learn what when? They're all going to learn it by the end of the week, but the routine, the schedule, those kinds of things, there's lots of room for adaptability and flexibility on that, right? If you've got older kids who aren't used to this, one of the things that you've got in your back pocket is you pay their cell phone bill, right? You are the one who ultimately has control over what they have access to. So if you establish during your family meetings that devices are going to stay, in a box or bin or whatever on, mom's desk until X, Y, and Z are done. As soon as those things are done, you have access to it again, right? So it's not if you don't do this, you don't get that. It's as soon as you're done this, it's all yours, right? It changes the thinking pattern away from I have to do this before I get this to once this is done, then I get it. And it's a little shift, but it makes a big difference.
Like giving an employee a bonus.
Kind of, yeah. Except it's not above and beyond bonus, right? You're not paying them. You're just allowing them the privileges that they've earned with their responsibilities, right? Because that's how life works, right? I mean, when you're an adult, if you don't get things done, you don't get the rewards, right? And so it's not reward and punish. It's, these are natural outcomes that they're going to have to learn.
Consequences.
Yeah, and a consequence, it's funny, I have this conversation with my middle schoolers all the time. A consequence isn't necessarily negative, right? The definition of a consequence is just an outcome.
Yes.
So the consequence of getting everything done really quickly is I get my device sooner, or I have more time to play, right? The consequence of not doing the things you're supposed to do is that those things have to wait, right? So it isn't necessarily a negative thing, it's just an outcome.
Yes, I like the word outcome better than consequence.
Yeah. It's funny how it develops this negative connotation. And I think it's because a lot of parents and a lot of teachers just use consequence as a softer word for punishment. And that's kind of what it's become. And that's unfortunate, but that's a whole other talk for another day.
Yes. We'll have to come on another time and talk about it.
But I think
I'm going to start using that myself, outcome.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And I think that, taking it back just for a minute to number 5 about responsibility and independence, you've earned the right, or the privilege, I should say, of having cleaning service or, meal service or laundry service. But your kids haven't earned that right? They have those things by virtue of gifts you have given them. So they have to learn how to do this stuff. Otherwise, you've actually done them a disservice. If you don't give them the time to learn this stuff when they're young, then when they go off into the world, they all of a sudden have to figure out how to go to school and work their part-time job and get their homework done and get their laundry done and cook and clean. You've essentially done to them what has just been done to you because of the corona pandemic.
Yeah.
So
I think you don't learn those the same way if you're suddenly just pushed out of the nest and you have to figure it out. I just don't think you learn it.
Absolutely. The kindest thing you can do for your children is to give them these things gradually, let them build that confidence and feeling of capability, let them make mistakes. And it's also the kindest thing you can do for yourself. A former parent of mine referred to it as enlightened self-interest. That it takes a little bit longer in the short term, but the long-term gains are significant. So that's number 5. And it leads into number 6, which is calm the chaos with a prepared environment. So, when you walk into a Montessori classroom, it's specifically designed for the ages of the kids who are in there and all the curriculum they need to learn. But your house right now is a home, and it's an office, and it's a school. So it's really, really, really hard to have all of those things happening in the same space at the same time. Some families have the luxury of space where they can have, an office for one parent and an office for another parent and a space for the kids to do their work. But that's not a luxury that every family has. So your best friend is about to become Rubbermaid bins or cardboard boxes, because each kid can have their own box or bin. They can decorate it however they want. You just killed another hour right there. And that's where their school stuff is going to go. So if they're working at the dining table, they bring out their bin. They work for however long you've decided in your agenda. They put everything back in their bin, and it's out of sight, out of mind, right? They're not sitting there looking at it, feeling guilty because they didn't finish the math sheet they were supposed to finish. You're not looking at it feeling guilty because you weren't with them doing their homework, right? And the mess is gone. So if you don't have the physical space to separate, bins and boxes are amazing for that, because you can just tuck them away in a closet, in the corner of the living room, whatever, tuck them away and they're gone, okay? Separating out your workspace is also going to be really important, right? Chances are you're on video conferences and that kind of thing. So you, as a parent, you earn the most secluded workspace, right? You have to. So this is where buy-in from your kids is really important. So you talk to them about it. And it's going to take time to implement. I'm telling you this right now because they're used to having you 24/7, or not 24/7. They're used to having you for an undivided amount of time while you're at home, right? This is going to take some time. But if you're working in an office with the door closed, right, your kids are going to make a sign. And it's going to say, daddy's working, see mommy if you need help. Or, mommy's working, see other mommy if you need help. Right? It's a visual reminder that when they go to the door, they have to stop themselves because that space is not for them. And they're going to test you. They're going to knock on the door. They're going to slide their fingers under the door like a cat, right? They're going to try.
What do you do? Do you ignore them?
Yes. So they don't believe you yet because they haven't had any reason to believe you yet, right? This has never been necessary before. Kids push against the boundaries that you establish for them so that they understand those boundaries are firm. And this is where other parent comes in. If you know that from 9 till 12, parent A is in the office with the door closed, it's parent B's responsibility, especially in the early days when you're getting used to it, to scoop up the child and kind of whisk them away. And then it's hey, let's look at the agenda. What time is it? Okay, what are you supposed to be doing right now? All right, it's independent choice time for you. So are you going to do this or this? Right? If it's older kids, it's, come on, that's not fair. Leave parent A alone. You had time with them this morning and you're going to get time this afternoon. Look at the schedule. We're building a fort in the backyard this afternoon. So, you can handle this. And
what if it's a single parent?
That does make it harder because depending on the age of the child, right? If they're little, then you're trying to get work done while they're napping, or you've got them in a playpen, right? You've prepared an environment for them that is safe and stimulating for them to do things while you're working. The hope would be that you can talk to your employer and have some flexibility there. But in that situation, it depends on the age of the kid, right? A 2-year-old can't be left unsupervised, right? They just can't. But a 5-year-old, right, you can set them up in a corner of the office or of the space where you're working. And, that is their space. They've got their activities. They're choosing what they're working on. So they're concentrating. When you don't tell them what to do, you give them a limited choice between things. Most of the time, they dive in and they stick with it. It's something that I watched, with countless children over countless years. It's an amazing phenomenon when they have some choice and they have some autonomy and they understand that what they're doing is making their parents' life easier. And they've already had connected time in the morning, right? They've already had the emotional temperature taking. They've connected with you in the morning. You've already set the routine for the day based on what your day looks like. So you're already setting yourself up for this kind of success. You're already giving them choice. So with those quick wins in place, it's going to lessen how much they're coming to you and begging and begging and begging. And then, it is going to take a bit of time and a bit of figuring out. And again, these are things I'm happy to talk to individual families about individual circumstances. Separately, that's something I'd be pleased to do.
So for the single parent, would your advice still be, when you see them sticking their hands under the door for the, being a cat, is it still your advice to ignore that?
Yeah. If they're a 7-year-old, go away.
Yeah, okay.
If they're a 10-year-old, go away. Right?
That's their outcome. Right? That when I do that, nothing happens. I don't get attention.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And we teach other people how to treat us. Yeah. And they're going to test and they're going to try. Something else that's really cool about kids kind of 5 years old and up is that they like to help make the rules. And so if you're a single parent, or you can do this, 2-parent family, whatever that looks like, it's a great time to have conversations about, what is an emergency? What is running out of Oreos an emergency, or something's on fire, right? Like what is an emergency? And so, if you are in your office with your sign on the door, maybe they've got a ticket system where they've got 3 tickets. They've got red, yellow, and green. And, if they feel that need to check in with you and connect, they slide a green ticket under the door, and, you come to them. They know you'll come to them in a couple of minutes when you're free, right? You'll give them a hug. You'll have a snack together. You go back into your office and shut the door. If it's a yellow, they're telling you, okay, I'm good. Like, I need you sooner rather than later. Right. And so you find a way to, to put your call on mute for a minute, to give them a hug, whatever that looks like. And if it's a red, okay, like, they need me right now. And if they learn that if they save those reds for when it's really, really necessary, they're going to get what they need from you. But if they false alarm you, they're cut off. Right? And again, it takes time to build. But if you set up the first 4 things that we talked about, you're going to see a lot less of this. If you try to implement this as a standalone, you're going to be beating your head against the wall. And that's goes back to the Montessori philosophy as well. You have to prepare the physical environment and prepare the emotional environment.
So how long do you think it takes to start seeing some improvement? A week, a month?
With the quick wins, you're going to start to see changes right away. You're going to start to see, because you're already adjusting based on what you know to be true about your family that day. So you're already going to see less of the temper tantrums, less of the craving of attention and that kind of thing. We talked about calming the chaos with the prepared environment in terms of separating the workspace and the living space. But in terms of living space, one of the things that's going to be really important for your sanity while you're working is that your kids are engaged in meaningful activities as well. So they're not just being, babysat by the iPad. We'll talk about device usage a little bit later, but it's important that they have a space in the house or, in the corner of the apartment, on the shelves or whatever, where their free choice activities are. Puzzles and games and Play-Doh and cards and craft supplies and all those kinds of things. Doesn't have to be expensive stuff, but things that they know they can go to the shelf, take out their Lego, and they can sit for hours if they want to, because they will. When they're not being told you have 45 minutes for free play, they will dive in and get creative.
What about some kids that are not able to entertain themselves? Is that a thing, or have they just been taught?
They've been taught. Yeah. So they've never had to. I was reading a great article. My mom sent me this article the other day from today's parents about kids forgetting how to play. And, again, this is I could do a whole seminar on helping children rediscover that ability to entertain themselves. And we're also going to talk about this in points 9 and 10 about lifting some of the pressure off of parents. So maybe I'll come back to that a little bit.
Okay.
I want to move on to number 6. Sorry, not number 6, number 7, which goes along with the interruptions, because I'm hungry.
We're at bedtime. I'm thirsty.
Exactly. And feeding the masses is part of the challenge, and it's part of the opportunity. You are not a short order cook. It is not your responsibility to feed your child every moment of every day. It's just not. So this period of time that we're in is an amazing opportunity to start building their life skills, building their self-regulation, and involving them in meaningful ways in the family. So the reason that I have this one under the 4 tips to kind of implement gradually is you're not going to want to wake up tomorrow morning and decide that that's the day that your 10-year-old is making dinner, right? This involves a little bit more time, a little bit more thinking. So, on a Saturday morning, you sit down together and you talk about, what do we think we're going to eat this week, right? We need to make a grocery list. Older kids, elementary age and up, love looking up recipes, right? Figuring out what the family is going to eat, figuring out where they're going to get the ingredients, right? Because of the restrictions right now, only one adult should be going to the store, no children, keep everybody else home, right? Disinfect everything when you get home. And the grown-ups should also be the ones putting the groceries away, because you're wiping everything down. So you just can't have the kids involved in that right now. But the meal planning, they can be involved in. They can be looking up online, okay, well, how much does this cost and how much does this cost? Because they're figuring out how to buy the groceries on a budget, right? That's math right there. That's a life skill they're going to need. So you get them involved in the planning and in the food prep. And then what you've done is you've just spent quality time with your children, device-free time with your children, but you have not been entertaining them like a circus monkey. You have involved them in a meaningful way in things that have to get done. You're building their skills and you're giving them quality, undivided attention. And that links back to the family meetings, right, that you're having in the mornings, and that connect time, that emotional temperature taking. When you are guaranteeing them quality, uninterrupted, device-free family time, you're limiting those cravings for attention on their kind of on-demand schedule. So then when you're looking at the day-to-day, right, little ones need to be supervised while they're eating, right? You don't leave a bag of grapes for a 3-year-old and tell them to go get themselves that snack, right? There's a safety thing. You love them. You want to keep them alive.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that can be done to foster that independence. So either in the evening when you're making dinner or in the morning as part of that time spent together, you're prepping the snacks. So, a 3-year-old can go to the fridge, open the fridge, and take out their cup of milk that's pre-poured in there for them, right? Or they can have a little jug in the fridge. They can get themselves milk or get themselves water, right? They can do that. If they know these are my carrot sticks and dip, they can go get that, right, when they're hungry. Kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, they can be doing that without needing you, right? Older ones, elementary age, they, with your guidance, prepare what their snacks are going to be for the day and set them, they can have a box on the counter and a box in the fridge, right? That's fine. If they decide to eat all of that by 9 a.m., that's on them, right? They're going to be a little hungry by 4 o'clock, but, they're not going to starve. It's okay. And then middle and high schoolers, they're on their own, right? They can go to the fridge and they can get it what they need. And the cool thing is that they know what you're making for dinner that night and the next night and the next night because you meal planned already. So they're going to learn, like, if I need mushrooms for the spaghetti sauce that we're making for dinner, but I went ahead and washed them and cut them and dipped them as a snack, I've just taken an ingredient away from what we're using for dinner, right? So they start to learn the connectedness, the planning ahead and the self-regulation and the time management and all of that. So, you are not a short order cook, and this is an amazing opportunity to be building some of those skills and giving them the kind of that bird's eye view of the planning pieces, right? You're developing their frontal lobe while they're hanging out with you.
Well, I think maybe I need to be reparented because I think some of those things I'm lacking, but it's okay. I can work on it.
Right? None of this is like, you're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and be like, that's it. I'm going to implement all 10 of these things, right? I'm going to be perfect.
Yes.
That is, we're progress, not perfection, right? We are humans in progress. And right now we're humans in progress in a really weird time. So, we have to cut ourselves some slack. And, the reason why I bring up the first 4 points especially is to set your family up for realistic expectations. So you can make progress together without guilt and shame and beating yourself up because things didn't go the way you wanted them to in your head, right? Adjusting expectations has a lot to do with it. So that's number 7. Number 8 is device usage. So you want device usage to be thoughtful and intentional and purposeful. You don't want it to be falling down a Netflix rabbit hole or getting involved in an Instagram back and forth conversation and suddenly 3 hours are gone, or using that time to put yourself into panic mode because you've got CNN on one screen and NPR on another, and you're driving yourself crazy. You're going to have to use a screen for work, most likely. Your older students are going to have to use some sort of device for connecting with their school. Starting next week, I'm teaching online Zoom classes with my students. So there is going to be some device time that is required. And there's also going to be some time where you want to use it to FaceTime with grandma or to, connect with a neighbor that you haven't seen except through the window, sadly, pressed against the glass. And that's a good thing, right? We have connectivity in a way that we've never been able to have it before. It's amazing. And it's also dangerous. And for us, we grew up in a time where our brains were fully formed before devices came into it. Right? I was 24 when I got my first cell phone, right? Kids now are developing in lockstep with technology. And apps are being designed to play into their weaknesses, right? We know that technology is addictive. We see it ourselves. The number of times I pick up the phone and go, oh my God, how has an hour gone by? Like, time to go, right? So our kids need us to set really firm boundaries. So if you're looking at younger kids who don't have their own devices, they're using the family's devices, make sure that the time they're spending connecting is intentional and purposeful, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting on a YouTube video, Paw Patrol or whatever for half an hour while, you need some time to get something done. That's totally fine, right? But if they're doing that all day, every day, not only are they missing out on all the opportunities we've been talking about, but they're wiring things to need that. If you're looking at older kids, right, your middle schoolers and your high schoolers, they're wanting to do their work in their rooms, right? They want privacy, they want sanctuary. That's okay. But what you need to do is be proactive about it. You need to have a digital citizenship agreement with them. And I'd be happy to provide samples of that later. But bottom line is that in order for them to have the privilege of working on their laptop in their room while they're doing their work, you need to have access to all of their passwords and login information. And they are not able to change it without notifying you.
I'm writing this down.
We'll send it to you. We'll send it to you as well. And you need to have an agreement with them that they will not, under any circumstances, delete their search histories. And if they do, you will automatically assume that they have looked up something they're not supposed to, and they will immediately lose their privilege. Simple as that. They will then be doing their work on their laptop down in the dining room with the laptop facing out, so everyone can do their work. You're giving them trust, you're giving them respect, you're giving them autonomy, and you're also letting them know that there are very firm boundaries for their safety. They crave those boundaries, right? If you're looking at non-work time, cell phones, Snapchat and Instagram or whatever the kids are doing these days.
Yeah, TikTok.
There we go. If you're looking at that, this is the kind of stuff that you're setting up ahead of time. Again, you have to have access to all of their passwords, right? And you're talking to them about it. So let's say your family agrees that your 14-year-old gets an hour of just fun device time, right? Or an hour and a half, whatever that looks like, right? They can be texting with their friends, they can be Snapchatting or whatever. If you decide as a family that that's the amount, let them decide when that happens, right? Maybe yesterday afternoon when they were having their hour or hour and a half of device-free time, they got into an argument with a friend. And then you took their device for bedtime, which we'll talk about in a minute, and they've been thinking about it all night. And they've been rolling it around in their head, and they can't see them at school first thing in the morning to talk about it and clear the air. If you tell them that they can't have their phone until all of their schoolwork is done, they're going to be focusing on that all day and getting nothing done. Whereas if they know, I get an hour and a half of device time in a day, I need to have that first thing in the morning so that I can clear the air with my friend that I was texting with last night, that's fine, right? And then when their hour and a half is up, you take their device again and they go and do whatever else has been established in their agenda for that day. Regardless of how much time your family decides, you must take their phone from them at least an hour before bedtime, and you must lock it up. And I know that sounds draconian, but the thing is, these devices are addictive. And they need for you to set these boundaries for them because they are not yet capable of doing it for themselves.
I think some of the parents aren't either.
It's true, right? They cannot use their phone as their alarm clock, right? You can go on Amazon and get them an alarm clock if they don't yet have
They
one.
do still exist.
Exactly. You can send the dog in at 7 a.m., right? That's fine. but you need to actually take their device and like, I'm not kidding when I say like lock it up, because if you put it on, your desk in the office, there's nothing stopping them from getting up in the middle of the night and going and taking the phone, right? They're not ready yet to handle everything that comes along with that constant contact, and you're helping them establish boundaries that they aren't able to themselves. So
good advice. Good advice for the parents too, because I know that I myself, I'm spending too much time using devices, especially near bedtime.
Yeah, me too. And then an hour's gone by, and
yeah, more than an hour. But I want to ask you: are you aware of any recommendation as to you said an hour and a half, but are you aware of any recommendations maybe in healthcare or I guess education where is it an hour and a half? Is it 2 hours? And is there a recommendation about how much time you should spend consecutively?
So it really depends on a lot of factors, right? Because it's not just the time spent on the device. It's also the time spent on the device that is not being spent on other things, like playing outside and creative play and just hanging out and being bored and figuring out something to do from that, and household chores and playing games with your younger siblings and.
Yeah.
So, I'm hesitant to offer kind of a blanket statement on it. I'd be happy if families have specific questions. I'd be happy to kind of talk through their circumstances and make some suggestions. But it's hard to make a blanket statement. But really, the more time they can spend in non-device related things and using those devices specifically to connect, right? Not to play Candy Crush and suck time. Because
scroll.
Yeah, exactly. It's the more those devices can be used for purposeful communication and intentional connection, right? Your family might have decided when you were taking that emotional temperature in the morning, like, okay, it's pouring rain and it's just not going to be a good day. At 4:00, we are all shutting it down and we are all watching a movie together. And we're going to make popcorn and we're going to eat pizza in front of the TV and it's going to be amazing. Because you can, right? You have that flexibility. You don't have to cancel soccer practice. You don't have to cancel the piano teacher. You don't have to get your homework done. There are amazing opportunities for spontaneity and flexibility. And those are the things your kids are going to remember. They're going to remember that they had a calm, home where they felt secure and they felt needed and they felt important and like they had some control and some autonomy and they did some really fun stuff. And
hopefully those things will continue. I think in some strange way this has been a blessing.
Well, one would hope, and it's interesting. One of the things that I discovered very early on in my teaching career was that once kids have a taste of independence, they are not giving it up. So, the famous Montessori quote is "help me to help myself." And it's so true. For little ones, they crave that ability to do things. When they get a little older and they're not doing the work for the joy of the work in the same way, but they understand, like, look, if we get this done, we have more time to do stuff together as a family, right? They understand the trade-off.
Yeah, I hope that people are using this time to, as you said, be more intentional and spend that time together really engaging. It's always amazing to me when you go out to a restaurant, not these days, of course, but when you go out to a restaurant and you see all these people at tables and they're not engaging with their phone.
Yeah.
And I always joke around like, oh, look at that lovely couple over there spending some quality time together.
And then you end up getting them in your divorce.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I'm not going to say I don't ever do that because I do, and I'm really trying to be more mindful of and just keep my phone in my purse when I'm out to dinner. But I hope that we can all see some opportunity. Like you said, you've been trying to put this in a more positive light. See the opportunity of actually engaging with your family, that you're all stuck together.
Exactly.
And right?
Exactly. And if we go back to the purpose of parenting and educating, that has always been the purpose of raising humans who become adults who can manage themselves in an unpredictable world, in a future that we don't know yet because it doesn't exist yet. That's always been the purpose. That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Which brings me to points 9 and 10, which
Yeah.
are my gifts to parents. So I've been working with other people's kids for a little more than 30 years, and in a variety of different capacities. So I've had the chance to.
How old are you?
It's been 87 years. I started working with other people's kids. A really long time ago. In many capacities. But I've had the chance to observe objectively, what works with families and children. And I've also spent thousands of hours myself in the trenches with other people's kids, in the diapers and the vomit and the temper tantrums and the toilet training and the emergency room visits at midnight and, the soccer practices and the doing their homework, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand on a very real level the pressures and, the guilt. And so I can tell you that these next two things are about as close to universal truths as you can get. And they are my gifts to you to lift off some of this guilt and some of this burden that is being unintentionally placed upon you to be the Pinterest-worthy parent and the perfect homeschooler and all of that. The first is that you are not a circus clown. You are not a servant, and you are not a school headmaster. Okay? You have to cut yourself some slack. Okay? It is not your job to entertain your children 24/7. In fact, it is not in their best interests for you to do that. You are not supposed to be able to educate them to the level of someone who went to school for years to become a teacher, right? Not your job. And you are not required to bend to their every whim because you feel bad that they can't see their friends right now, okay? The situation is what it is, and we can't change the situation from the outside. But if your kids feel your calm and your consistency and your trust, if they have choices and autonomy and they feel those boundaries that you've put up for them, they're going to feel secure. They're going to feel loved and safe. They don't need you to try juggling in one hand, your conference call with your boss, and juggling in the other hand a plate of cookies, right? You are not Betty Crocker. It is not your job to do all of those things. If you set up a physical and emotional environment that is prepared to meet the needs of your family and your needs as well, you can cut yourself some slack. You have permission to kick the kids outside in the beautiful weather and sit down and have a cup of coffee with your spouse. You have permission to leave them playing in the living room while you go exercise. You journal, you meditate, whatever that looks like. By you building their independence and their responsibility, you are freeing up for yourself the time and the mental space that you need, right? And that is more self-care for parents than a facial or a self bubble bath or a manicure or whatever. That is the true self-care because it lifts the pressure off of you.
That's incredibly important. And, you might want to shift these around. Maybe that should. People need to hear that because I know that there are parents being so hard on themselves with all like you said, the pressure of having to be the perfect parent and the perfect teacher now and the perfect this and the perfect that. And if I don't get this exactly right, my poor kids are going to be screwed up and, we'll be reading about them in the newspaper. And
the best indicator of childhood success is parental mental health. If you have a stable family, your parents are more or less in sync with their parenting styles, and they're able to breathe and express themselves, they learn their self-regulation from you, right? If you can express how you're feeling, you can show anger and frustration and fear, but in a way that isn't out of control, in a way that is, you're going to get through this, right? If you can do those things, your kids will benefit, right? Put the Pinterest lists aside. Doesn't matter if you sidewalk chopped messages to the neighbors, right? Those lists are ideas and suggestions for things if you are looking for something, but they're not they're not to replace your sanity, right? This is, you need to cut yourself some slack.
Great advice.
And my last one is, it goes back to that freedom within limits. Your home is not a democracy, but it's also not a dictatorship. So your kids don't yet have fully formed frontal lobes, right? They don't have 40 years of life experience. So you have to make the big decisions, right? You have a legal and moral and parental love responsibility, to make the big decisions that they can't make yet. They need you to set firm boundaries and not bend to their every whim. They are craving that from you. So even if you feel sad that they were supposed to have their birthday party and they can't have their birthday party, by all means, make that day special for them. But that does not mean that you bend over backwards to get them whatever they want and promise them a pony when all of this is over, right? Yeah. You do not owe them that, okay? But by the same token, it's also not a dictatorship, right? The only way that your children are gonna get the practice that they need at making decisions and developing their frontal lobe so that when they're adults, they're not living in your basement, involve them in as many of the decisions as you can, right? So the lower stakes things, the things that at the end of the day really don't matter, let them have autonomy and some say. Maybe you do a little bit of negotiating, right? Let them feel what that feels like, consensus building, compromise, all of that. So it's not a democracy. You are the grown-up, right? And at the end of the day, you are the ones who are responsible for keeping these humans alive, But it's also in their best interest, in your best interest, to have some flexibility.
Excellent advice. Thank you. And I want to end this with asking you if you can share with us a little bit more about your business and what it is that you offer and your client.
So my business is called Guided Parenting Support, and it's because that is how I view myself. I am a guided parenting support, a GPS, because kids don't come with a roadmap. And parents are in the driver's seat of their family, but parenting is a long road. And there are lots of roadblocks and obstacles, and it's really easy to get off track. And so my business is based around offering that guided support that is customized. So, I intentionally kept the word solutions out of my business name, because one of the things that I am finding over 30 years with other people's kids is there's a pattern towards families looking for kind of quick solutions, rather than digging a little deeper and looking at what's the actual problem, what's underlying this. And so what my business offers is a variety of things. So one-on-one work with clients, families. At this point, I'm not going into the home and working with children. I'm specifically working with parents. And then I also offer workshops and seminars based on a wide variety of topics, and for all age ranges as well. I can customize based on what an organization needs. I can go into schools and talk to parents. I can offer parenting courses and workshops, that kind of thing. And then I also do professional development for teachers as well.
So how could we reach you?
I'm still, getting the business going. I teach full time as well. So I'm working on a website and social media presence. But in the meantime, my email is yourparentingroadmap@gmail.com. And
I think this was wonderful, and I can tell we barely scratched the surface. I hope that this information, it might seem overwhelming, but I hope that the parents get something out of it and they can start implementing some of these things. And would love to have you on again in the future.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity, and I hope that some of this was useful for at least one parent out there.
Yeah, please, parents, let us know what you thought about this material. And if there's anything that you need more clarification on, you can always reach out to Kate, and you can reach out to us. I'm going to get some of the materials that you promised us in this interview, and we'll post it right here on Facebook and make it available to everyone. So thank you again. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
All right, take care.